Hi class. So this week we are starting our nutrition section, which is our last section of this class. Every semester we get here and I think, oh my gosh, class is like wrapping up pretty soon. I know we're still in the middle, but I think November is just going to kind of flow quickly and we're going to be at the end before we know it. So this section, I'm going to do a two-part section because I've grouped chapters 12, 13, and 14. The chapters sometimes go into what I think for this class is more detail than necessary. This class is a very practical, hands-on kind of class with knowledge that I think we should be able to use every day. And then all of a sudden, some of the nutrition information in those chapters gets a little too much on the cellular level. Now, if that is your thing and you are interested in nutrition at that level, that's wonderful. And, go on to learn more about nutrition if that's never going to hurt. But for the purposes of this class, I think we need to keep it very practical information that we can use kind of every day with kids. And so that's really what I like to focus on out of these chapters, which is why I'm not going kind of straight through like the textbook does. I'm picking and choosing the different areas of those three chapters that I think are most important. So when it comes to these three chapters, this lecture and my slides are going to be probably more essential than some of the more detailed information in the chapters. But this same information is also in the chapters, so it's good to, do a skim of those chapters, but then when it comes to maybe like test questions and things that are really going to help you, not only for this class, but I think just practically when you're working with kids every day and preparing meals for them, that this is going to be more of the information you're going to use on a regular basis. Okay, so let me share my screen here and we will get into our slides. So like I said, it's going to be two parts. We're going to go through about 10 or 11 slides here, and then I'm going to do a separate video for the next, or for the rest of them. But they're all in one slide show, or one PowerPoint document. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is just what food does for our body. Food supplies energy, right? Our body needs that to work, to move, to do everything that it does, even the things that we don't know our body's doing when it's doing it, like digesting food and keeping our heart beating and all those things. But the things that we for sure need energy for: movement, building new tissue, maintaining our body temperature, functioning of all of our body organs, everything. If you were thinking there was something that didn't need energy in our body, you're wrong. Everything does. And again, it's third only to oxygen, right? We need water, we need food, which is our energy, and then we need air. We need all those things. We need oxygen, water, food. There we go. So nutrition is really the study of how food, it's the study of food and how it's used by the body. So just to kind of go through sort of the basics of how our body functions, we first start by putting food into our mouth. We chew it up, that starts the breakdown. And then we swallow it, it goes down into our stomach, and this is where digestion happens. So acids come in, it helps break down that food even more. So it makes this very, very thin liquid that then can travel through, where's my cursor? There it is, through our intestines. There is 25 feet of intestine or something like that in a normal body. So it goes through a lot of different passageways. And during that process, the intestine is taking out those nutrients for our body to use as energy, for the cell building, for movement that we need in our muscles, for our heartbeat, for everything. And then it passes from small intestine to the large intestine, and then what's left, we excrete out. So getting into some basics on nutrients. Our food is made up of different nutrients, and we're going to talk about some of those basic ones. So proteins, we've got carbohydrates. So proteins are your meats and sometimes, like eggs, different fishes, and those types of things. Then we've got carbohydrates. That includes a lot of our breads and grains, anything made from grain. So that could be bread or pasta, rices and things like that, as well as fruits and vegetables. We don't always think about those as carbs, but they are carbs. Anything that our body breaks down into sugars is a carbohydrate. Then the next section is fats. And so we get fats from different sources as well. Sometimes our meats have fats in them. Our fish have fats in them, but then from obvious sources like, let's say, butter, it's the fat, it's literally the fat layer off of the milk. Our oils and things like that, those are all in our fat groups. Vitamins, so those are the micronutrients that are in fruits and vegetables that our body uses in very small doses, but it maintains our cellular functions and things like that. And minerals, the same, but those come from other sources, like sometimes a vegetable, but maybe more like nuts or our dairy products, like that we can get calcium from and things like that. And then lastly, water. Our body needs water to function for the transportation of these vitamins and minerals throughout our system. So let's talk more in depth about proteins. We're going to break each of these down. So proteins are going to include meats, our eggs, seafood, poultry. So when I said meat, obviously I must have meant beef there, or because poultry then includes like pork and chicken. We get protein from beans and peas, so some of those legumes in there. Nuts and seeds, some have protein as well, and then soy products such as tofu. So for folks that are vegetarians or vegans, that is an option as well. Some of the benefits of protein, so it's a good source of B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, and iron. It's the most costly source of energy. So proteins by far are going to cost more in the grocery store when you're actually buying them. When I say costly, I mean like actual money. Proteins are always more expensive. They break down into something called amino acids that our body uses for energy. And it's used for building tissue, regulating our body functions. Like I'm thinking of, oh gosh, what are they called? Weightlifters, bodybuilders. That's what I was trying to come up with. Bodybuilders use, clearly I'm not one, they eat a lot of protein because that is what is helping build their muscles. As they break those muscles down, the muscles then repair themselves and get stronger by having more protein. Carbohydrates. So carbs, we have some that are called complex. And really that means the complex carbohydrates are more typically healthy for you. So our fresh fruits and vegetables are complex carbohydrates. They're going to have a higher content of minerals and vitamins. They're going to maybe have more fiber, which helps regulate our body functions, help us go potty better, things like that. And they're typically lower in calories. Whole grains. So when we talk about whole grains, that means that the grain from the plant hasn't been broken down as much before it's turned into whatever product it is. So it might still have like a brown, let's take white rice and brown rice. Brown rice still has kind of like the outer hull, if you will. I'm not exactly sure if I'm using that term right, but sort of an outer layer on the actual little grain of rice, where white rice has been stripped of that. So again, it just adds sometimes more vitamins and minerals to the food, or maybe more fiber. So in general, if you're having carbohydrates, you want them to be complex. So you want them to be in the form of fruits and vegetables, or you want them to be in the form of a whole grain product, like a whole grain bread or cracker. Cereals a lot of times are made of whole grains, because we know children eat a lot of cereal. And so manufacturers have kind of helped to build that into foods that children eat a lot of. Even some pastas and things like that are now made with whole grains. You can even find pasta that's got extra protein in it. You can find pasta that has vegetable in it, like 30% vegetable. So a serving of pasta is like eating a serving of vegetable or something like that. You'd have to read the box, but nonetheless, it helps kind of get vegetables into your children when they're not suspecting it. And my kids can't tell the difference between any of them. They will eat all the pastas. we are a pasta loving family. We don't have any bias against any pasta. Legumes, that's the fancy term for peas and peanuts. So those are a carbohydrate as well. So different than some nuts that have protein. Dried beans, obviously you're going to cook them to eat them. You don't eat them dry. And then root vegetables. So potatoes, corn, carrots, they're a little bit of a different source because they're a source that provides starch. And so it's a little bit different than just the general, vegetable term up there, but those are specific ones that provide more starch, which tends to break down more into more sugar than, say, broccoli or something like that. We have carbohydrates that are simple. And so these are the ones that we should try to avoid more, that tend to be hopefully more treats rather than the everyday food that we consume. Now, fresh fruits and vegetables are on both, because fresh fruits and vegetables have the complex part of a complex carbohydrate, but they also have naturally occurring sugars in them, which sugar is part of this, is a simple carbohydrate. Anytime you can have sugar naturally, your body can handle that better, and that's pretty much fine, right? You don't necessarily, unless you have you're diabetic and you have a certain carb limit for your health, you don't need to worry so much about limiting fruits and vegetables because of sugar intake. It's the simple sugars that's added to food that's what we want to limit. So table sugar. This has no nutritional value, despite the fact that it's very, very tasty. It's a good thing that we're doing this series. Anyway, table sugar is something that we want to limit because it has no nutritional value. It's literally just giving our body sugar that our body, if it has that in excess, it stores it as fat. And so that's why. Some dairy products also have the simple sugar in them. So anytime you're seeing, so lactose is the simple carbohydrate that is in dairy products. And it has some benefits, like in aiding our intestinal bacteria. Dairy products also have calcium, which is an important mineral for bone health. So we're not saying you can't eat these things. Now, table sugar really has no nutritional value. Like, there's no way to spin it that it's good for you. But fresh fruits and vegetables have naturally occurring sugar, so those are fine. And limiting some dairy in your life, that's good for getting those minerals that are important. But overconsumption, really, of anything could lead to problems. Fats. So these include our oils, our butters and margarines, our cheeses, some of our meats, and the egg yolk. The white part is protein, but the yolk is the fat. We've also got nuts and avocado in there. Okay, so some tend to be more healthy sources, right? Your nuts, your avocado, even some lean meats. Those are really, good sources of protein if you can incorporate those into your diet. If you're incorporating, and even eggs to some degree are just fine. Everything in moderation. If you're, only, or you have a huge part of your diet as these other fats, then trying to find alternate sources, incorporating other types of food into your diet so that you're full sooner and you don't need to have as much of the cheeses and butters and oils is helpful. And it's hard for me to say that because I love cheese very much. But fat is actually has some good benefits for our body. It is an essential nutrient that young children need. Before the age of 2, there should be no restriction on fat. We shouldn't even be concerned about that. Now, when I say that we shouldn't be concerned about fat, I mean actual fat in these forms. I don't mean excess sugar that turns into fat. So that's a difference. But this specific nutrient, fat, is essential for young children. It helps with their, and I'm not going to use all the scientific terms, but essentially their brain neurons, there needs to be a coating where the neurons pass through, and fat is what helps to do that. And so that's really important during those first 2 years of critical development. Fish and plant-based fats are obviously going to be a healthier source than your really fatty meats, or like I said, your cheeses and your butters and things like that. And it's a very concentrated source of energy, so you get a lot of bang for your buck there. Vitamins, these have a lot of different benefits. So your B12 is going to support your growth. Your D is helping absorb minerals. Your A helps with bone and cell health. Your C is for calcium and iron absorption. So certain vitamins need to be eaten with certain types of foods in order for your body to take them in better. So sometimes we assume that, if I take a multivitamin that has all these things in it, I'm good to go. It doesn't really matter what I eat. But that's not exactly true, because the timing also has to be there, right? If you're taking vitamin C, it's going to help absorb calcium and iron. Well, but if you're not having calcium or iron in your normal diet, then you're not getting the full benefit of that vitamin. The great thing is that vitamins are in lots of yummy things like fresh fruits and vegetables. It's best and most nutrient dense in the form of when it's raw. So as far as, and what I mean is the fruits and vegetables. So if you can munch on carrots or broccoli, or, well, I guess there's not really a lot of fruits that we tend to cook, but anyway, cooking or steaming them, sometimes some of the vitamins will leak out. And so trying to eat them raw is always best. You're going to get the most vitamin density during that time. That's also, again, why we say to eat the rainbow, right? That means eat a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables. The colors actually mean there are certain types of nutrients in them. And so if you're only eating red vegetables and fruits, you're limiting some of the nutrients that would potentially be in green vegetables and fruits, or yellow vegetables and fruits. So make sure you're eating a variety of color as well. And vitamins support blood formation, bone growth, metabolism, neuromuscular function, basically so many things that our body needs to stay regulated and healthy. And mega doses can lead to toxicity. So vitamins are something that we need in micro doses. Taking more than the recommended vitamin, you're not going to overdose if you're eating it, right? If you're just getting your vitamins from fruits and vegetables, you're probably not going to overdose on that, unless you're doing something really extreme. But when it comes to these gummy vitamins that taste like candy, we have to be careful with children because they want to eat them like candy, and that could actually lead to toxicity. But also taking more than it recommends is just wasting your money, because your body won't use more than it needs. It just comes out in waste. And so You're literally flushing your money down the toilet if you take more vitamins than you need to. And then minerals. So those are our calcium for bone health, our phosphorus for our bones and our teeth. Iron is a component of our blood product, and it's an important nutrient we need, and zinc is for wound healing. So minerals can come from many sources: dairy, nuts, grain. So our carbohydrates, all of them, right? Fruits and vegetables, meats. So all of the different nutrients pretty much can have minerals in them. So again, eating a wide variety of foods, making sure you incorporate all of the different nutrients, that's important. And similar to vitamins, it's going to support growth, building of bones and teeth, blood formation, regulating our energy, and neuromuscular function. Again, our body uses minerals in small doses as well. Some of these are sometimes on, even though it says a multivitamin, a lot of times there are some of these minerals as well in those multivitamins. But again, our body uses them in small doses, so taking more than necessary is not helpful. And it's always best to get your minerals and your vitamins from the actual source, which is foods. Water. Water is essential to life, right? And survival. It's an important part of all our body tissue. We are made up a lot of water. It helps to dissolve and distribute these vitamins and minerals so that our body can actually use them. And it helps our body, or helps aid our body of waste. So, when you're not hydrated, things don't flow as well. All of that, just the ease at which our body functions really comes from water. So it's so important. It's making me thirsty and feel like I'm dehydrated right now just talking about it, because I can only remember drinking coffee today. And it regulates our body temperature. So especially in our hot summers, when we're sweating, we are losing a lot of water. And so we got to rehydrate. We got to make sure. And even in wintertime, when it's cooler outside, it's easy to get dehydrated because our body doesn't feel as warm, and that doesn't signal us to drink as much water. So when you're doing your health tracker, really try to focus on water. If that's a weakness of yours or a challenge that you have where you don't always drink enough water, try to do that, because it's very essential. And you'll feel better. You will actually notice a difference pretty quickly if you are hydrated for a few days in a row, getting enough water. Everybody's different, okay? There is no one amount of water that's right for everybody. They say eight glasses a day, but what's a glass? I've heard half of your body weight in ounces. So I'll just be completely honest here with all of you. Half my body weight would be, what would it be? 65 ounces is half my body weight in ounces. So that's maybe what I should aim for. I don't think there's a real full scientific way to determine it, because also, like I said, the outside temperature is going to determine how much water we need. We're going to be sweating out more of it if we've exercised that day, or again, if it's really hot. So it's all just a ballpark, but if you really tried to do like half your body weight in ounces every day, you'd probably be on a pretty good track. Let's see. Oh, and another important thing is that this is really what we should be offering children most of the time, not other types of beverages, because those beverages will put children at more risk for diarrhea, for tooth decay, and excess weight gain. Many of those sugary drinks, sodas, juices even, they are adding to the caloric intake and the sugar consumption that children have. And it's really unnecessary. Like a child could go their whole life, or a human could go their whole life without juice or soda, and they would be better off than if they had it. So I'm not suggesting, that it's terrible to drink any of those things. But again, it needs to be, something in a small amount, maybe a treat every once in a while, not what they're offered continually throughout the day. Okay, so tools for teaching. MyPlate is one of the focuses of your textbook, and it's a focus of sort of from our federal government in how we should help think about what we serve children and to teach them about food groups. And it's actually a really good tool because it's easy to kind of look at your plate and think, do I have these 4 things? The only setback is that it doesn't necessarily tell us portions, but it does tell us what each meal should contain. And we should be getting 50% of our food each day should be from fruits and vegetables, right? So if you're thinking, of course, this is kind of per meal because it's a plate, but if you even think throughout the day, is about 50% what I'm eating of fruits and vegetables? Probably not. I should do the health tracker again because I could use a bump in some of these, especially in fruits and vegetables. About 20% should be our lean proteins, and then 30% should be our whole grains, right? And then we've got like a cup of dairy, so 8 ounces or so of dairy as a drink. A lot of kids want milk to drink. And again, in moderation, that's fine. In between meals, it should be water, or it's best if it's water. Okay, and so this, we're going to stop there for this section of the lecture, but this is a really important tool to use not only to evaluate your own meals, but also when you're meal planning. And we'll be talking more about that in some of our future chapters about how we create meals for small children and making sure that it has all the components. The downside to MyPlate really is that it doesn't tell us what the plate size is, right? And that's an important factor because we're not talking like a plate like this big, right? We're probably talking about something very, for the most part, pretty small. And especially if it comes to young children, let's say you're serving a meal, a lunch at a daycare and you're serving 2 and 3-year-olds. Again, this is all relative and it depends on how much energy you've already expended and how hungry you are and all the things. But a lot of times a good frame of reference is to take the child's size of their palm, so this palm of their inside of their hand, and use that as their serving size. Let's just think for a second about how small the palm of a 2-year-old's hand is, right? That's like 2-3 bites of meat if you're serving a protein, right? It's not much. And a lot of times we as adults give them portions that are adult size. We as adults are eating portions too big for ourselves. But again, it's really just, it's a good starting place anyway. If they say they're still hungry after they've eaten all their little portions of the different food groups, then of course they can have more, but at least you know that they've had all the nutrients that they needed for that meal because they've eaten these different portions of grains, proteins, veggies, fruits, dairy. And then if they still want more, then you give them another portion that's like the size of their palm. And you're also not wasting as much food because definitely children don't always eat what we give them when we kind of think about a plate and filling it. And then we end up just having to scrape that off into the trash, or we save it for later if you're at home, but they don't want to eat it again. So it can be helpful for them to feel like they're not overwhelmed with the amount of food that you're serving them, but then also not wasting food. And that's important if you're spending your out of your budget for your childcare or your preschool. It's important to be cost effective in that too, because food eats up a huge portion of of funds, that's for sure. It does at my house. So I can only imagine how it would at a preschool. Okay, that we're going to stop there for this lesson, and then there'll be a second part to follow up.